Sean Levine will step into the cage with Brendan Tobin in Are You Gonna Fight Me?
I'm gonna fight your ass!
Here on Tapped Out.
That's right, fight me like a man!
Only on the BetQL network.
You know the rules. I want a good, clean fight. When I tell you to break, I want you to step back up my command and break. Now go back to the corner and come out fighting at the bell.
Back into the show, Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine. I love you, dude, but sometimes I gotta punch you in the face. The segment's called "You Gonna Fight Me," where we disagree with each other and usually get pretty heated. If Tyson Fury loses in his rematch versus Usyk, and I think he probably does, and I think he probably gets knocked out, it's time for his ass to retire. You gonna fight me?
It depends how he loses. So like if he gets brutally knocked out, I think there's definitely a talk there. I would guess based on boxing, he'll probably get like one more comeback fight to kind of show, hey, is it over? Like this is kind of like Deontay Wilder, where Deontay Wilder, he loses to Joe Parker, and it's like, all right, does he have anything left? Oh, he got obliterated by Zhilei Zhang. So like now it's over, retire. So I would like that to probably be the case, but best guess in boxing, the way that it goes is he'll, the vampires will suck the Tyson Fury Gypsy King blood until he's absolutely dry. And, we'll probably get him versus Anthony Joshua when they're both 38, and it should have been 8 years ago, and we'll see what happens. So I don't disagree with your point, but I disagree with how it's going to probably play out, knowing how boxing goes.
What if he doesn't even get knocked out, but he gets knocked around the ring like a rag doll, like he did last time? I mean, look, I know it's a violent sport, but dude, that couldn't be good for anybody. He got punched in the head a lot that night. Not knocked out technically, but maybe even worse the way that fight actually went for him.
Yeah, I think the thing that's interesting, what's funny, man, is I remember watching the Netflix show with Tyson Fury. And the whole parameter around it was he was enjoying retired life. Like this was his first retirement. He looked like he absolutely hated it. Like he hated retirement life. He couldn't stand being in that giant mansion with all those kids. And, maybe that'll change because you're older, you change, you calm down. But I do think this is a guy that is an interesting case study because he's not only been away from the sport once, but twice. And they both seemed like they were really tough retirements. One, he ballooned up to 400 pounds, thoughts of suicide, didn't do well. This time it was just a little bit more antsy. I'm not ready to hang him up. I'm at the best of my game right now. So this will be a little different. If you are to lose, can he just hang with, hey, I had the great run. I did everything there is to do. I really was one of the reasons the heavyweight division came back. Maybe there's more peace there, but we have seen that he has struggled with this in the past.
I think the biggest potential boxing matchup out there, and I hope they make it, because you talked about if we saw Fury and Joshua, it would be years too late. And that's that sport's notorious for. The most famous, of course, Pacquiao Mayweather, at least 3 years, maybe 5 years after it actually should have gone down. The one they need to make now is Canelo versus Crawford. There's not a bigger potential fight out there any weight class. You going to fight me?
I would agree with you. That's the one that I want to see the most. I would say probably based on eyeballs. Anything Ryan Garcia does next, assuming he gets through, well, you want to talk about guys who are spiraling out of the ring, but assuming that he gets through this suspension and he is good to box in a year, I think whatever he fights next, assuming that it's a Teofimo Lopez, a Gervonta Davis, again, like those are probably going to rival it as far as business is concerned. But as far as pure boxing and two of the best, that there's nothing I want more than Terrence Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez.
I wasn't that impressed with Teofimo Lopez. He fought and won last week and made me a little bit of money. I had him on the money line, but I didn't think he looked great.
Yeah, that's the thing with him is, I think that he's a little bit hot and cold. People thought that, this guy was going to maybe be the next face of boxing, and then he ends up losing to kind of a mediocre fight. I love George Kambosos, but kind of a mediocre fighter in George Kambosos. A very strange fight that had strange circumstances around it with it getting moved all over. But that's kind of been the story of Teofimo's career is like, at the best what his talent can be, but he seems to be a guy that is okay not necessarily pressing the gas on, I go balls to the wall every training camp. That's what makes the guys like Terrence Crawford and Canelo great. Like it's very rare that you see them look way different. Maybe there will be a style that gives them trouble. Not Crawford, but like maybe there'll be a boxing style that gives Canelo, but like Canelo's going to pretty much be in shape for every fight. He's going to be impossible to knock out. The standards that are going to be there for the guys who are the best. And then there's the guys who are, can look like the best, but they're not able to hit that every single time.
Back to the UFC, where heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, and friend of the show, and a guy I've had a man crush on now for a while, I love that guy, says he welcomes Alex Pereira to heavyweight. If that fight was to go down, let's say in the next calendar year, am I crazy to think? I think Aspinall will be favored to win. You going to fight me?
No, I'm not going to fight you. I think that he probably will be, because I think anytime a guy comes up in weight, there's going to be a lot of questions, unless, if we see Tom Aspinall struggle in any way against Curtis Blades, and we haven't seen Alex Pereira fight since. So I guess it's probably dependent on Aspinall's next performance on how the line will look. But if you just told me sight unseen, hey, let's just play fantasy and say, hey, Curtis Blades pulled a hamstring, can't fight. And they need a replacement fight. Who's there to save the day? Yet again, Alex Pereira, and they were to fight. No, I think Aspinall is going to be the favorite. I think that on based on where they are right now, he'd be the favorite. But if he has a dicey performance, if he doesn't impress in some way, I think that can waver, because I think it's going to be a pretty close line.
When and if we see John Jones back in the octagon, and I feel like you always have to say that when you talk about him and Conor McGregor, it's like, damn, I hope so. There's some options. He says he wants Stipe. Aspinall says he wants John Jones. From my perspective, the coolest fight would be John Jones versus Alex Pereira. You gonna fight me?
I think that
Aspinall, imagine those guys. I mean, after Bruce says both their names and meet in the middle of the octagon, I'm getting what do you call it? The goosies. I'm giving myself
the goosies. Look, it is goosies inducing, and it could be goosies galore. But again, I think this kind of goes back to, what does Tom Aspinall do next? Like, he's so the new kid on the block, but I think if he does something impressive against Curtis Blades, if he can steal the show from a Manchester card in a couple weeks, I do think that Aspinall's stock could still rise. And if he calls it out the right way, I think that he could get the hype train back on him. But yeah, for right now, look, Pereira's the guy right now. He's arguably the biggest star going right now in the UFC, and that's saying something for a guy who basically just stares right through you, doesn't say much.
Besides the fact that he's a giant, you would never think that Tom Aspinall's a cage fighter. That's the thing. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if John Jones, I never knew, and he told me that he fought mixed martial arts for a living, or Alex Pereira, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. You try to kill people inside of a cage. I don't know if people hold that against him. I don't know if John Jones holds that against him, but Aspinall, and again, we brought him on the show. He's just, the way that he speaks, and he's formal, and he's kind of normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes and no. Like, I just think it's been fast, man. Like, look, to your credit, you've been on the Aspinall train for a while. I just don't think that I just don't think that people have gotten quite there. And I think with Pereira, it's taken time. We've been talking to some guys who have been skeptical about him, right? And like that he hasn't, that they thought, he's a gimmick fighter. He then lost to Izzy. It's kind of a weak division 205. These are fair criticisms, but you keep doing it again on short notice, and you keep giving people the highlight reels, you become undeniable. So I don't think it's a packaging thing with Tom Aspinall. I think Aspinall can get there. It's just, he's just the new kid on the block. Like, he needs probably another year and 2 viral wins, and then all of a sudden I think he can be in that case and everybody will know him.
I saw New Kids on the Block last week. Fun you bring that up. Old school band. Kind of fun, I'm not gonna lie. If we see the Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler fight, the most likely outcome is that Michael Chandler puts him right through the mat. You gonna fight me?
I just don't. Yeah, I don't. I'm not gonna fight you because I don't think Conor's gonna win. I just think that Conor, it's just been too long. And I've said this, this on the show plenty of times. I just think that the bigger Conor's gotten, the less special he is.
1,000,000%.
He was the best featherweight I've ever seen. We don't have to do GOAT list, but I just think as the fights have gotten bigger, he just hasn't looked as impressive. That left hand's not as special as it used to be. And so, his only knockout is, hitting Donald Cerrone with a shoulder, and Donald Cerrone's been on the record many times afterwards saying, I didn't want to be out there for that fight. So he basically beat a guy who took not a dive, but basically
He was
was
thrown
like,
to the wolves. More than anything I could ever remember.
he didn't want to be out there. So I don't know, man. I just don't know if Conor McGregor's that dangerous anymore to the best guys out there. And if you want to be, a bastard and you want to say, well, Michael Chandler's not the best out there. Dude, he's really dangerous. Every fight that he's basically fought in the UFC, he's been in it, has had opportunities to win. Maybe he just didn't get his hand raised. So I just feel like you're going. Now, the one thing that is going to be interesting about this, Sean, as the fight goes on and it goes off into the ether, I think that the fascinating thing is the bigger advantage that Michael Chandler had was, activity, right? Like he was fighting. And now he's been put in this weird position where he's probably been asked to hold out in his career longer than he ever has. I mean, this is a guy in Bellator who felt like he was fighting every 3 months for Bellator. And now it's like, hey, now you're in this position where you're just waiting and you're getting older. You're getting asked about the same fight over and over. And like, are you getting better? Like, do you feel like you've sharpened all the skills? You got to go through these emotional highs and lows. So there can be some intangible things that could be messing with Michael Chandler, but ultimately I just feel like, Conor being at the point that he's at in his career, health-wise, motivation-wise, I just don't think it's going to go well for him.
Most people age that way. That's how it goes, especially when you fight for a living. And then there's Max Holloway, who somehow is getting a whole lot better and starting to knock people out, right? The Korean Zombie, last time out, Justin Gaethje. We're all hoping that he fights Ilia Topuria next. If that one goes down, you're going to fight me if I say, I think Max knocks his ass all the way out too.
That's a fascinating one. I'll fight you because I think that Max's best path to win is not standing at the center of the octagon and, saying, hey, let's lay down. He may still do that. But I think like Max Holloway, we've seen the best Max Holloway is like, hey, you keep him at that distance, you hit him with a number of shots, you hit him with volume, and we've seen that awesome close range spinning back kick that he can throw on guys that makes him a really dangerous fighter as well. So I actually think that his best route is just like dance all over this guy's face with my fists for 5 rounds. Teach him a lesson, show him there are levels to this thing, almost a Calvin Kattar-esque like performance. Maybe people say, hey, Topuria ain't no Calvin Kattar. Fine, okay, but Max Holloway we know is one of the best to ever do it.
Brendan Tobin, Sports Machine, Sean Levine here on the BetQL network. Speaking of Gaethje getting knocked out by Max Holloway, I haven't really heard anything from or about Justin Gaethje since then. You're going to fight me if I say, I think he's got one more title run in him. I feel like he's a guy that balls to the wall as it gets. And at this point, I didn't think that he'd still be fighting with his style. But now that he is still here and wants to continue his career, I think he's got one more shot at the title. You going to fight me?
Yeah, definitely not going to fight you. I mean, if you look at the division right now, he's third, and he's got something going for him that helps when you want to get to the title, and that is you have a dominant champion and they need fresh opponents. And so you look right now, and right now the top 5 in the lightweight division are Sarukian. Well, Islam has beaten him already. He's suspended right now for punching a fan. So a little bit of drama there. He's beaten Charles Oliveira already. He's just beat Dustin Poirier. So it's like, hey, UFC, what are we doing here? We're doing Justin Gaethje, or are we doing Matthews Gamrot? Okay, I think we've all answered our question here. Like, they're obviously going to go with, now he probably needs a win, but yeah, I definitely think that he is well positioned just to get one win, and he'll be right back in there.
You and I both watched that MVP Ian Machado Gary fight and lost on the decision. I thought MVP won also at least 2 of the rounds. And I'm not saying I wouldn't call it a robbery, but everybody in the room that I was with thought MVP had won that fight. You're going to fight me if I say I've seen enough from Machado Gary to say that guy is not championship material.
No, I'm going to fight you on that. It's not that I don't think that he's championship material. But I do think there's a little bit of, and my number one reason for that is he's young. He's 26, and we've seen enough with UFC. The prime is not typically 26. The John Joneses of the world, that is an aberration. Typically it is 29, 30, 31, 32.
What weird sport like that, huh?
It's like a weird, yeah.
Other athletes' primes would be 23, 24, 25, but you're right. You get to 30, you get that that man strength, and something happens.
You know, I look at the other guys in this, you know, Jack Della Maddalena. Could he beat him? That'd be a fun fight.
Yeah.
You know, JDM though has shown you, like, he went like JDM against Gilbert Burns his last time. You know, that was a fight where he had to fight through some stuff, right? Like, he had to go through some adversity. Yes, he was given a huge gift because Gilbert Burns made a critical mistake, but he took that mistake and then put a stamp on it. And I think with Ian, if he would have finished that fight against MVP and would have done it with, you know, rear naked choke, if we would have finished the job, we would have felt a lot different. But he didn't. He kind of just hung on for dear life.
And that's what we've said in a bunch of his fights. Like, he should have finished, and he didn't. You brought it today, dude. I'll give you that fight. It was close, but the judges gave it to you. Coming up next, we'll talk more fighting. We'll make some money together. It is the BetQL Network.